emotions such as fear, awe, or inspiration can trigger the release of adrenaline, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, causing the erector pili muscles to contract. Your hairs stand up. You get goosebumps.
When I first saw Dune Part 2 in IMAX, at exactly this moment, I had goosebumps. Only 6 minutes into the film, this was the frame that, for some reason, etched itself into my brain. Something about it filled me to the brim with excitement. In fact, throughout the whole sequence, I was just thinking, this is so fucking cool. And in this video, I want to unpick what might have made me feel like that. What were the little technical things that were done so well that, in my opinion, make this the perfect shot and the perfect scene? Let's start with the context. This frame is part of a shot, which forms part of a larger scene I like to refer to as the eclipse sequence. Picking up the story only a few hours from where we left part 1, the scene starts with Chani motioning to Paul to stay quiet, and Stilgar instructing the two surviving Atreides to stay put as he leaves with the other Fremen. Looking over the crest of the dune, Paul and Jessica realise that the Harkonnens are quickly closing in on them. We're shown the first of 3 shots of a solar eclipse. We can divide the sequence into 3 parts, based on these 3 shots that were shown of the eclipse. The progression from 2 moons partially eclipsing the sun, to a total eclipse, and finally to 1 moon partially eclipsing the sun. This mirrors the narrative arc of rising tension, climax, and resolution. Now, I love this use of imagery for several reasons. Eclipses are powerful symbols of change and transformation. This could be the filmmakers planting a bit of a flag in the sand, saying to the audience, this isn't part 1 anymore. It could also be that this is a pivotal moment of character transformation for Paul and Jessica, a test that, if they pass, is another step towards being accepted by the Fremen. Interestingly, I learned that the sequence was originally written as a night scene, but Denis Villeneuve turned it into a daytime eclipse for several reasons. The eclipse will bring a frightening, surreal look. This will be surprising for the audience, even if they're meeting Paul again just a few hours after the end of our story in part 1. The striking red images will hopefully help us avoid the feeling of putting on a cold, wet swimsuit, he said. And I really think that that decision pays off. Here's my very unartistic reimagining of the scene if it took place in the dark. It just wouldn't slap you in the face like the vivid, almost oppressive reds and oranges do. Having this eclipse create a red hue influenced how the entire scene was captured. Cinematographer Greg Fraser used a regular Arri LF camera with a visible light IR cut filter to remove some blue and green from the colour spectrum. We were changing the composition of light structure to lean more into the red wavelength, he explained. Greg also went to great lengths using the 3D Unreal Engine software, photogrammetry, and ground LiDAR scanning to establish the exact time of day when each shot featured in the storyboards had to be filmed within each location.
When I saw the complexity that Dune 2 was going to have from its pre-production perspective and from its planning perspective, I realised that being able to use Unreal Engine, being able to have control over light, staging, all in pre-production, was only ever going to speed up the process. A large part of what we used Unreal for was to pre-plan the shots that we were trying to achieve, so that we were able to then put metahuman characters into the location to pre-plan when the shadow was going to reveal them, when the shadow was going to be off them. So using Unreal in pre-production was a godsend.
To replicate the striking concept art of Lady Jessica killing a Harkonnen, for example, he identified the precise time, date, and location when the sun would appear directly behind Rebecca Ferguson as they filmed her action. Now, an unexpected twist occurred when the team experienced a real-life eclipse in the Jordanian desert. On October 25th, 2022, the moon obscured 35% of the sun. Now, while it wasn't enough to darken the sky, it was sufficiently visible for the crew to capture the event. The real-life eclipse was later incorporated in the film, with a second moon added in post-production to stay true to the source material. And that's how ultimately we ended up with the eclipse sequence. Talk about the stars aligning. Another big part of what makes this sequence brilliant is the sound design. Thomas Flight, in his video essay about Dune Part 2, articulates brilliantly just how crucial sound design is for pacing and building tension. He explains how the sound is deliberately lowered right before the climax of a scene, amplifying the intensity that follows the anticipation. You can see this concept used throughout the film, and in this scene too. And it's also the micro detailing that helps add texture and ground the sound design. They all add to the lore and the world building of the Dune universe, and while the sound design immerses you in the world, the precision of the visual elements amplifies this immersion. Let's go back to the specific shot of the Harkonnen ascent. Notice the spacing between the characters. There's a clear sense of order. The uniform spacing implies a rigid command structure and strict control, which we know to be true about the Harkonnen. It suggests that the soldiers are under tight control, further emphasizing the authoritarian nature of their leadership. Typically portrayed as brutal,
they're not human, they're brutal!
Here the flight is almost graceful, which creates a dissonance that is actually quite unsettling. As the scene pans out, you see the rise and fall of the soldiers from the cliffs, and I suppose at a stretch, you could say that it's foreshadowing the rise and downfall of the Harkonnens. But maybe that really is just me overanalyzing it. The composition features strong diagonal lines formed by the slope of the dune and the positioning of the characters. Diagonal lines are dynamic and convey a sense of movement and tension. In this case, the upward diagonal accentuates the character's ascent. But despite all of its technical proficiency, it's how it makes me feel that impresses me the most. I think editor Joe Walker said it best.
Here's the thing. I think with Denny's films, it gives me a chance to play with something super, and it's very hard to find the word for this, but I would call it brain-stemmy images. It's appealing to some part of the brain that's old and not necessarily verbal. It's not necessarily front-lobal. I don't know what the hell it is, but I can describe those images. I can give you a list of them in the film. And they're all very sensory, incredibly sensory.
And I just want to say, if you didn't notice, Joe Walker actually did a little bit of narration for me at the beginning of this video. Joe is the editor of Dune Part 1 and 2, but he's also the narrator of the film book scene from Part 1.
To avoid making rhythmic noises which attract the sandworms, the Fremen cross desert spaces using the sandworms.
So big thanks to Joe for taking the time out to actually record that for me. That was really, really kind. He certainly did not have to do that. I just reached out to him on Instagram and he was very kind in getting back to me. So thanks, Joe. Now, I truly believe that the passion and talent of those involved in making Dune and Dune Part 2 really shines through in every frame and every shot and every scene, sequence, throughout the whole films. Every shot feels like it has real soul and care put into it. This obsession with getting the little things done well helps carry the film effortlessly, in my opinion, through its 2 hours 45-minute runtime. And for me, it's the little details that I remember the most. It's the thing that keeps me talking about a film long after it's finished. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video essay. What I would say is there are plenty of videos that cover the entire film. Obviously there's loads of elements that I didn't explore in this video. I just wanted to kind of focus in on a specific part. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Do appreciate it. If you like this kind of video, subscribe. We'll be doing more like it and focusing in on specific scenes and shots within movies that I find cool and that elicit strong emotions within me. So thanks again for your time. All right, bye.